Hey there, I'm Breeanne from Creamerie, and today we are reacting to an ice cream video called Ice Cream Made with Two Bowls, No Machine Needed by someone named Adam. So we're just going to get right in.
There's a lot of good methods for making ice cream without an ice cream maker. I've tried many of them, but this is my favorite, the two bowls method. It's pretty easy, it requires no special equipment, and it yields at least a couple pints of fantastic ice cream.
So first off, the ice cream looks like it has pretty nice texture. He's got two bowls going here, and it seems like a lot of work because you're having to hold the bowl in place. You have your bowl full of ice. Your hand's probably getting cold. And with you using a hand mixer, your hands and arm is getting tired too. It seems like a lot of work. Whereas when I make ice cream, all I have to do is throw it in the machine and walk away, which is very easy.
Fantastic ice cream. We're going to start with an ice cream in its easiest, purest form. Just sugar, cream, and milk. No eggs, no pre-cooking. Here in the US, we call this a Philadelphia-style ice cream. I do think you can significantly improve it by trading in the milk for evaporated milk. The higher protein content in this gets you a smoother texture. Some people add dried milk powder to their ice cream mix. That's just a different route to the same destination. Here's a big 10-quart metal bowl, 9.5.
I think it's cool that he's using evaporated milk. I have not tried that in my ice cream, but maybe sometime I'll try it. We'll see.
A bowl, 9.5 liters. I don't think the material really matters. It can be anything. It's just got to be big. Inside is a 4-quart metal bowl, just under 4 liters, and I do think metal is best for the inner bowl. It needs to be something thermally conductive. You can do this with lots of different bowl sizes, but I think the outer bowl should be at least twice as big as the inner bowl. I don't think this next thing is essential, but it helps if you chuck these bowls and your ingredients into the freezer for like 10 or 15 minutes before you start. Okay, outer bowl.
I agree with that. Anything when you're making ice cream, all of your ingredients, even your bowls, should be as cold as possible. So he's only putting his bowls in there for a few minutes. I would say, well, with these, at least an hour. But if you're using a freezer bowl attachment, then definitely you need to freeze that overnight.
Comes out and we need to fill it halfway up with ice. People say it has to be crushed ice. I have not found that to be the case. I think normal ice cubes work just fine. Into this ice we need to stir a bunch of salt. Salt lowers the melt.
He's really just using a modern take on an old-fashioned hand crank ice and salt machine. He just doesn't have the machine that they would use. Ice cream hand crank machine. He's just putting it in the bowls that he has at home.
Melting point of the ice, which will result in supercooled water wrapping around our inner bowl, chilling our ice cream. I'm just using normal kosher salt because that's what I have, and I'm eyeballing roughly 1 part salt to 4 parts ice. There is a product called ice cream salt you can buy. Some say it works better because the grains are bigger, which helps them disperse more evenly in the ice. I don't really understand that. I just know that this works too. I think the main reason to use ice cream salt is that it's cheaper because it's not intended for human consumption. It's full of impurities, which is fine because we're not putting it in the actual ice cream, hence cheaper. But I'm not making ice cream every day. I'm just doing this for fun, so I'm just stirring in the salt that I have. I'll nest the inner bowl into the ice and then pour in this whole pint of cream. That's 2 cups, 475 mils. We'll follow that with 1 cup, 235 mils of evaporated milk or regular milk. Any mixture of some kind of cream and some kind of milk will generally get you into the range of fat to water ratios that work well for ice cream. Then sugar. 3/4 of a cup or 150 grams would be pretty standard amount for this much dairy. You could stop there. That's sweet cream ice cream, but I'm going to give it a huge glug of vanilla. If you were adding chocolate or any other flavorings, you would do that now. If you have chunks you want to put in, you generally wait until right at...
So what he's doing is just putting all of his ingredients straight into the bowl, and he's going to mix it right there. I will always suggest making your base ahead of time because the longer you let it sit, the more all of the water and the proteins can be coated and formed and developed so that you have a richer, deeper, nicer flavor and texture of ice cream.
till right at the end after you've churned it. Now we'll put a hand mixer in there and beat on the lowest setting for maybe 8 or 10 minutes. It's a long time. This is the tedious part, but it's not so bad. It's certainly nothing compared to old-fashioned hand churning. Try to work the edges with the beaters. After a while, some of the mixture might want to stick and freeze to the walls of the bowl. We need to make sure we get it off. Could you do this with a whisk? Sure, go for it, Popeye. After a few minutes, this will start to get really fluffy, like whipped cream. In fact, it is whipped cream. A traditional ice cream churn spins much slower and therefore does not incorporate nearly as much air up front as this method does. Indeed, if you were to taste this now, it'd taste like Cool Whip. But don't worry, this is just phase 1. After upwards of 10 minutes, I can feel the ice has melted a lot.
So he pointed out something that is very important. He said ice cream makers churn slower than what he's doing right now. He has already a lot of air in this ice cream that he's trying to make without any ice crystals. And so you're going to have just a lot of air and less product in your pints when all is said and done. I don't know how much he's going to actually get from this, how many pints he will fill. But when I fill my pints, my ice cream is very dense. If you were to hold one of my ice cream pints compared to a store-bought ice cream, mine is much heavier. And therefore, that tells me that the one from the grocery store is full of air. And that's why it's not heavy. So what are you wanting to go for? A product where you actually get as much as you can, aka a denser product, or one that is full of air and you're just spending the money buying something full of air? So essentially, that's what he's doing. He's just whipping air into it before any of the freezing actually has occurred.
Melted a lot, and my mixture doesn't seem to be getting any stiffer or colder or aerated. It's done all it can do for now. Now comes the genius step that I learned from Faith Durand at the kitchen. The whole rig goes in the freezer, the whole thing. If it doesn't fit in your freezer, you can just put in the inner bowl and then recharge the outer bowl with fresh ice before phase 2, which is to take this out of the freezer after about an hour in there and then beat it again for just a few minutes. You'll see it immediately deflate into something that actually looks like ice cream. No, this is not how ice cream is normally made, but again, different routes to the same destination. You might need to use a spoon to scrape any frozen stuff off the walls of the bowl. We want to spread that cold evenly through the whole mixture. I suspect what we're doing here is using the ice crystals that have formed in
the texture of this ice cream so far. I mean, ice crystals are definitely forming in here. You can see that, but it doesn't look very good. It just doesn't look appealing to me. It looks as if Cool Whip is thawing. And he did talk about it, kind of at one point, either tasting kind of like Cool Whip or something I don't remember. But that is what this looks like right now, is Cool Whip.
Formed in the freezer to pop all of the excess bubbles that we had in there, while at the same time we're breaking those big crystals down into smaller ones that'll be smoother on the tongue. If you didn't do this inside the ice bowl, the ice cream would melt way too fast, and indeed it is starting to visibly melt after about 3 minutes of beating, so we've done all we can do in there. Time to act fast. Pour this into some lidded freezer-safe container. I've got a little over a liter or a quart of ice cream, and this is a 1-quart container, so I'm just going to eat the extra soft serve right now. Get this into the freezer as fast as possible and let it harden. Some people say overnight. I say 24 hours is better. If you don't let it harden long enough, it might look and feel frozen, but it'll melt really fast in the bowl. This is hardened for 24 hours and it's perfect. One reason to make ice cream at home is that it's so rare to buy a...
The texture of his ice cream looks pretty good. However, I just wonder about the creaminess of it. There are many different components to ice cream that you can add that will enhance the creaminess to a product, that are all natural things, nothing artificial or anything. It looks like a dense ice cream. Also, when he's scooping into it, it also looks kind of soft.
So rare to buy a product this pure. It's just 3 or 4 ingredients and it tastes just so simple and good. I think the texture is right up there with any traditionally churned ice cream. Got to get some sprinkles because I am a child. Now, that basic procedure should work with any ice cream based recipe you want to use, and let's do another one right now.
It does look like it's melting
Let's do a French
pretty
style
quick.
ice cream, which is actually
which you get when you have air in your product. Also, fat melts, so the more fat you have in your ice cream, the quicker it can melt as well. So now he's doing a different type of ice cream. So let's see how this
Actually,
goes.
a frozen custard. I'm separating out
custard.
6 egg yolks. That's enough whites for me to actually use for something, so I'll save those. Now, other than the yolks, our ingredients are the same. 3/4 cup of sugar, but split. I'll whisk like half of that into the eggs. The sugar helps break them up and get them smooth, and it probably helps on a chemical level to keep them from curdling later on. All right, in a little pot, I'll dump my remaining sugar and my pint of cream, and I will bring that to a simmer. Oh, and a pinch of salt really improves just about any ice cream. When this is simmering, I'll slowly drizzle it into my eggs, whisking to keep them from curdling, and now back into the pot everything goes to simmer a few more minutes until it seems to thicken a bit. Off the heat it comes, and I'll put in my vanilla and my cup of cold milk. Yeah, it's just regular milk. We've got plenty of protein from the yolks. Some people would cook the milk with the custard, but I think putting cold milk in now helps to cool this down faster. We'll strain this into another bowl. Straining is not necessary, but you can see all the little chunkies in there. We'll need to cool this.
When you do a custard-based ice cream, this is a very typical way to do it, where you temper the eggs. I have only made a custard-based ice cream one time, and I did not have any scrambled eggs in it because I whisked, like he did, the eggs and the sugar together, and then I ended up putting those with the milk right on the stove, whisked it so that just constantly stirring so that there was no cooked egg in there. And same method with making sure that it's thick enough to coat the back of your spoon. But, to get away with not having any cooked egg in your ice cream, in your custard, that is a very easy way to do it. And you have less messy dishes.
This all the way down before we churn it. You got to cook your custard many hours in advance, which is why French-style ice cream is a bigger deal to make. As I said, I think the main reason to make ice cream at home is just for fun, but another reason is if you have something really special to put inside your ice cream, and I have these beautiful peaches. These are from a tree my friends Heidi and Chris.
I'm very curious to see how he does his peach ice cream, because I do a peach ice cream. Anytime you add really watery fruit to your ice cream, you're going to get a lot more ice and obviously water content to your ice cream. And that's not the best thing to do.
And Chris planted at their house.
have.
Absolutely beautiful. I'm going to peel those peaches. You don't have to peel them, but peach skins kind of taste papery in ice cream, and I'll just fillet the meat off the pits. This would be like 3 or 4 normal grocery store-sized peaches worth. You could puree all that, but I want perceivable chunks, so I will chop it up and then scatter on some sugar and a little lime juice. The acid will keep the fruit from turning brown as we just let this sit here and let the sugar break everything down. After maybe an hour, I can smash that with a fork, and that looks really good. Chunks of fruit any bigger than a coarse grind like this will freeze solid and hard inside ice cream like little pebbles. And that goes to chill, and sometime before we churn, we need to take that peach pulp and squeeze as much juice as we can into the ice cream mix. We need to churn it with most of the water already inside it, otherwise this peach juice could freeze hard and crunchy. Alrighty, again, we'll chill that whole rig for 10 or 15 minutes. Time to fill up the big bowl with ice.
So so far he's using the peach juices, which is a great idea, because then you do get that yummy fresh peach flavor to your ice cream. I'm curious to know what he's going to do because it looked like he's saving the pulp for something different. We'll see.
With ice, and look at that, my refrigerator can crush its own ice. Crushed ice has more surface area, so it makes better contact with the salt in the inner bowl, but I don't think it makes that big of a difference. Stir in roughly 1 part salt to 4 parts ice, nest in the inner bowl, and get beating for about 10 minutes. I should say my recipe here is calibrated to the size of my bowls. This is the maximum quantity I can make with bowls this size. If your bowls are smaller, you would need to scale down the recipe accordingly. All right, that seems as cold and fluffy as it's going to get. The whole rig goes in the freezer again. An hour later, we'll beat it again for a few minutes and deflate it. When it seems like it's starting to melt, stop, and this is when you can stir in any chunks without interfering with the freezing or aerating processes. I'm stirring in my peach solids, but you could go with chocolate chips, cookie crumbs, go nuts. I'm getting like 3 pints there because of the extra mass of the peaches. I'll let those harden in the freezer for a day, and there it is, a Georgia June in a bowl, straight from the tree to my mouth. Absolutely.
Well, the color of his ice cream looks very pretty. I would still be very curious to see how those little peach chunks turned out in his ice cream. If they created any ice or not. Anytime you add your fruit to ice cream, the ice cream will just freeze it. If you any place that adds, you can add in any ice cream shop that you go to where you can have fruit added into your ice cream and mixed in, it just freezes into hard chunks, and it's not really refreshing, and it doesn't really add to the flavor because the freezing process, like strawberries, for example, if you put fresh strawberries into your ice cream, it's just going to freeze, and then you don't really taste the strawberries. So with him using that pulp, all of the juice being expressed from it beforehand, and then throwing the leftovers into the ice cream, I'm just curious as to how it affected his ice cream and the texture and the flavor of it.
Absolutely delicious. A little cherry on top and party foul. That French-style ice cream base is noticeably denser and smoother than the Philadelphia style, but it's a lot more work, and I'm not even sure if I prefer the result.
This method is definitely becoming a lot more common these days, a no-churn ice cream. I have made some no-churn ice creams before, and honestly, I don't love the texture of the ice cream, probably because in the recipes that I have previously used, it calls for heavy cream and sweetened condensed milk. And I love sweetened condensed milk. I could take a spoon and just eat it from the can. But I don't like that type of ice cream, those components in the ice cream in a no-churn method. I don't think the texture is very good, nor is the flavor very good, because you just have this very strong, almost sickly sweetness from the condensed milk. Obviously, he is not using condensed milk. He is using sugar to his recipe. But it also seems like a lot of work where he's having to use the hand mixer, he's freezing it, he's taking it back out, scraping down the bowl. It just seems like a lot of work versus using a standard ice cream mixer, ice cream bowl. Does it take a little bit more time to have a freezer bowl? Yes, because you actually have to freeze it for a very long time. And preparing your base, I will always recommend prepare your base ahead of time so that all of the components of it can come together and you can have a really delicious flavored and textured ice cream. It's been a long time since I've done no-churn ice cream, so I don't remember all of the specifics to it or the outcome of the ice cream, but I'm sure that it would create a very dense ice cream, especially if you're not getting in there and agitating the cream. So that being said, I love dense ice cream, but the texture, you still need some air in your ice cream to make it to give it a good consistency and quality. Whereas no-churn, this method is different than the method that I have used. I never used a hand mixer with mine, and I didn't go in and freeze it and then scrape it down and freeze it again. I mean, maybe I would have to experiment with what he's doing here. It does seem like a lot of work where you're constantly having to go back and forth. Whereas if you just do a regular ice cream maker, all you have to do is pour your ingredients into the bowl, and then when it's done, you freeze it for overnight or longer. So you have this really nice hard ice cream, which I appreciate him saying he freezes his for 24 hours because that does give you a better ice cream. I just think I would have to go back and try no-churn. Honestly, I don't love no-churn, so maybe I'll try it. Maybe I won't. Do you guys like no-churn ice cream? Have you done it before? Which method is your favorite? What ingredients do you like in your ice cream? Do you do like him where he does his basic cream, milk, sugar? Or do you do a custard base with eggs? Do you use sweetened condensed milk with your cream? I mean, there's a lot of things you can do. Oh, and I forgot he used evaporated milk. So there's a lot of things that you can do in your ice cream, which is really fun to experiment and try new things, especially at home where you have control over your space and how you do things. So let me know how you like your ice cream. Thanks for watching. Bye.